I was 12 years old when this happened. My childhood was kind of crazy, and I was held back a year from all the moving around, so I was in 5th grade. We had just moved to a small town in Texas from Dallas, where my mum's most recent marriage had failed. I was not used to small towns, and pretty gullible for my age. We moved into a small little house, almost like a little shack. But it was in the older part of the town. I'm not sure if all states have neighborhoods like this, but in Texas, the historical districts of smaller towns are odd, in that they originally built very large, very nice houses, right next to small, crappy ones. The old, nice ones seem to mostly remain nicely restored, where the smaller ones have fallen into disrepair. So you have these kind of strange neighborhoods, where one block is full of very well-to-do people in nice old homes driving luxury cars, right next to a block that feels like a third-world ghetto. I lived on the ghetto block. My school was about 4 blocks away. The bus wouldn't even pick you up so close, and my mum didn't own a car. So I'd walk to school, and I walked by this house every day. Even here it stood out. Huge 2-story home, red brick, large white columned porch. The yard was immaculate. It looked like someone wealthy must have lived there, and being so poor, that was impressive to me. I'd heard stories about the owner. He would yell at kids and throw rocks, spray the water hose at anyone who tried to cut across his yard, and he always seemed to be outside on my way to and from school. But he never said anything to me at first, so I never gave it much thought. I had been walking by his house for about a month before he ever said anything to me. I should say here that even though I was 12, I was tall for my age and developing early. I also dressed really inappropriately. This wasn't really on purpose, but I was growing and we were poor, and my clothes fit poorly, and Texas was very, very hot without air conditioning at home. So I wore as little as possible. I wasn't completely stupid though, and didn't mind the attention from teenage guys. I really didn't have any friends since we moved so often. About a month after walking by, he talked to me for the first time. He just said, "Hi, it sure is hot out here," or something along those lines. I just agreed with him and said I was dying, I was so hot, and he offered me a soda. I don't know why I agreed. I guess I was just really hot, and I did want a soda, and he brought me over an unopened one. After this, he would talk to me every day. Not long conversations, just about the weather, school, where I was from, etc. He looked a little creepy, to be honest. Always wore a cap. Had that look that people get from working outside all their lives, coupled with probably chain smoking and poor diet. But his house was so nice, for some reason I decided he must be a nice person too. After a month of passing by and short small talk, he mentioned to me that he had a pool, and if I wanted to see it. It was late May at this point, and that sounded good to me, as he seemed trustworthy, and again, I was really stupid. He brought me through the house, and I checked out the pool. I have never seen someone who had a pool at their house before. It seemed unbelievable. He said I could swim any time I wanted. Then, for the first time, he looked at me, and it's like his whole demeanor changed. And he said, "I'd love to see those tits and that arse. Damn, we don't wear clothes here." Honestly, it wasn't even the words. It was the way he said it. The immediate change in his demeanor. The tone of his voice. I felt I was in serious danger, but had no idea what to do. He then grabbed at my shorts as if he was going to pull them down. I started crying. It's like he zoned back into reality, and started laughing. Then he stepped away and said, "Well, anytime you want, you better get going." And I left through the gate. I never told anyone and started walking another way to school until summer started. The next school year, I thankfully never saw him outside of his house. Then, the second month after school started, I heard from my mum a crazy story. He had driven his truck into a Lubby's in a close-by town. He shot 48 people that day. 24 of them died. He then killed himself. Also, apparently, he was stalking 2 of my neighbours. His name was George Hennard. I still don't know how to process all this information. It creeps the hell out of me, to this day. I still remember this happening so vividly. It was terrifying, to the point that I had to move rooms as I was too scared to sleep in my original one. So, here's my story. It's a long one. The houses in this suburb were back to back. So basically, there was a street, a line of houses, a fence sectioning them off, another line of houses, and then their street. The backyards were what touched each other, so you could basically climb your backyard fence and land in your neighbour's backyard. This is important to understand the layout, so I apologise. Towards the back of my house was the laundry, and then my room with a large glass door leading outside. It had windows on the side, which sat on a concrete side passage that connected the front of my house to my backyard. My bed was pushed against the wall, with the window above and next to it. 9-year-old me was a night owl. As a young kid, I used to pretend to go to sleep, and then wait for the all clear, then turn on the lamp and read my books. This particular night, it was windy, so you could hear the dry leaves being blown up and down the side passage. It was around midnight when I heard the leaves shifting and moving around outside a lot quicker than before. Assuming the wind had picked up a bit, I kept on reading. The noise was growing louder and louder, and it seemed to stop right by my window. The house is an older house, and it sits on stilts, so my window would have been 2 to 3 feet off the ground. I heard a bang against the wall, then a scraping sound. I froze, sitting up in my bed, as that noise came from right behind me. I panicked as the scraping was more and more frequent, and I turned the lamp off and did what every child would do in that situation. I retreated under my covers and hid whilst listening. My heart was pounding. I can still feel the fear to this day. The noises stopped, and I heard the crunching on the leaves as whatever it was walking away. I was trying to gather the courage to run to my parents' room, which was at the front of my house, but that meant I had to pass the glass door. Then I heard a thump, and another thump, up the stairs to the back door, then the clamouring of the wind chimes. They were metal and hung low. Whoever it was couldn't see it in the dark and must have knocked it as they were peering in my door. I heard them grab the wind chime and throw them to the ground. This was followed by tapping and scratching, and they even tried the door handle. I screamed to high heaven, hoping my dad would wake up. I heard the person clamber away. I got up and ran to my parents' room. I woke up my dad in a panic, declaring someone was outside. He took off with his baseball bat and no pants, like the knight in shining armour he was. I don't know how long it was, but he came back and told me he couldn't find anyone, and I should go back to bed. I refused, and slept in the lounge room that night. It got to a point where I was so unsettled, my parents had to shift all the rooms around to move me from that room. It was only years later, when I was 20, that I found out the truth behind that story, whilst we were at a family dinner, talking about things we did when we were young. I brought up that story. My dad turns to me and says, since we don't live there anymore, I guess I can tell you that I did find someone that night. Turns out, he found our neighbour, Bill, who was the father of one of my friends from school. He was trying to climb over the fence when my dad caught him, and the first thing he said to my dad was, "Oh, did something make her scream?" My dad refused to tell me what happened after that, but that line chills me to this day. He found his ladder on its side near my window in the morning, which of course he didn't tell me about either. The creep was trying to climb into my room. I live in what we call a villa, where there is a long driveway that leads to 15 houses at the end of a long road. My house is designed in a circular way, in which the kitchen and dining area are walled off from the 3 bedrooms and toilet, but you can walk in circles around the house and end up at the same spot. We have 3 cars in our family, since 3 of the members drive, but I don't yet, and my dad parks his station wagon in this visitor's parking space. From my bedroom window, you have an excellent view of this parking area, great lighting and just an all-around good view. One night, my whole family went out and took my mum's car to a restaurant in the city. I was just at home alone watching a movie, when around 10:30 p.m, there was a knock on the screen door. "Who is it?" I called. "Oh, it's your neighbour. Oh, your dad left his car lights on." I opened my door. Thank God my screen door was locked. There stood a man I had never seen before, and we hadn't heard anything about a new resident moving in. He looked kind of nervous, and he repeated, "Your dad or your brother left his car lights on in the parking space. You really should come out and turn them off." I replied, "Oh, okay. Thank you for that. I'll let him know when he comes back." He didn't move. He didn't flinch. He just stood there staring. You should come out now and turn them off. It's going to kill the battery." I repeated again that I would tell my dad when he came home, and he repeated that I really should, right now, at that moment, come out with him and turn the car off. I told him I was going to call my dad right now and tell him about the car lights, and he began to walk away. I closed the door, locked it, and then went around the back door and essentially barricaded it with locks and some chairs. After that, I placed a butcher's knife underneath my coffee table, and I went to the kitchen to look out at the car spaces. My dad's car lights weren't on, and the parking area was pitch black. I never saw that man again.